The transport ship docked at Station 7 with a soft hum, stood near the airlock, her bag over one shoulder and her grandfather's sword strapped to her back. She was 23 years old, not very tall, and her dark hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. To anyone watching, she looked like an ordinary young woman, but there was something in her eyes, a stillness, a patience that did not belong to someone so young. The airlock opened and she stepped into the massive docking bay of the Galactic Combat Academy. The station was enormous. Ships from 100 different worlds filled the bay. Creatures of all shapes and sizes moved around her. Some had scales, some had fur, some had too many arms or too many eyes. Had studied the files on the journey here, but seeing them in person was different. She felt very small and very far from home. A floating drone approached her. It scanned her face and beeped. Human designation. First Human Exchange Cadet. Please follow guidance lights to Orientation Hall. Blue lights appeared on the floor, leading deeper into the station. Followed them without a word. The hallways were tall and wide, built for species much larger than humans. The walls were smooth metal, and holographic signs floated in the air, showing directions in dozens of languages. Other cadets passed her. Most ignored her. A few stopped to stare at the strange creature from Earth. One of them, a tall being with skin and 6 fingers on each hand, pointed at her sword and made a sound that might have been a laugh. Kept walking. The orientation hall was a huge circular room. Seats rose up in tiers like a stadium, and hundreds of new cadets were already sitting down. Found a spot near the back and sat. The sword on her back made the seat uncomfortable, but she did not remove it. She never removed it. On her left was a creature covered in soft brown fur. It had large dark eyes and long ears that twitched when it noticed her looking. On her right was an empty seat. Was grateful for the space. A deep sound echoed through the hall and everyone fell silent. A figure walked onto the stage at the center of the room. He was tall, perhaps 3 meters, with 4 arms and scales that shimmered between blue and green. His eyes glowed with a faint orange light, and when he spoke, his voice was like stones grinding together. I am instructor. I have trained warriors at this academy for 47 years. I have seen cadets from over 200 species pass through these halls. Some became legends. Most did not. He paused and let his thermal-sensing eyes sweep across the room, felt the heat of his gaze pass over her. The Galactic Combat Academy does not care where you come from. It does not care about your traditions, your history, or your pride. It cares only about results. You will be tested. You will be pushed beyond your limits, and many of you will fail. The room was completely silent. Even the species that usually made constant clicking or humming sounds had gone quiet. Continued. Combat in this era is decided by technology, plasma weapons, particle disruptors, molecular blades that can cut through anything. If you cannot master these tools, you will die. It is that simple. He began walking slowly around the stage, his 4 arms clasped behind his back. I see we have some new species joining us this year. Let us welcome them properly. The holographic display behind him lit up with images and data. Different species were shown with their home planets and notable achievements. When Earth appeared on the screen, a murmur went through the crowd. Ah yes, humans, a young species from a small planet. This is their first time sending a cadet to our academy. His mandibles spread in what looked like a smile, but there was no warmth in it. Stand up, human, let us see you. Rose from her seat. She felt hundreds of eyes turned toward her, some curious, some hostile, most simply amused. Come down here, said. Let everyone get a good look. She made her way down the steps to the stage. Her boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. When she reached the stage, she stood before, her head barely reaching his chest. The size difference was almost comical. Walked around her slowly, examining her like she was an interesting specimen in a laboratory. Small, soft, no natural weapons, no armor, no venom. He stopped in front of her and tilted his head. And what is that primitive ornament on your back? Reach back and touch the handle of her sword. It is a katana, instructor, a sword. A sword, repeated. The word sounded strange in his grinding voice. Made of what? Metal. Steel. It was forged by my grandfather. He learned the art from his grandfather before him. It has been in my family for generations. The hall erupted in noise. Clicking, chittering, buzzing laughter came from all directions. Species with plasma rifles and particle weapons and blades made of hard light all found great humor in the human's answer. Even the furry creature had sat next to was making a soft huffing sound that seemed to be laughter. Raised one of his hands, and the room fell silent again. Your grandfather made this for you, he said. How touching. Tell me, human, do you know what a plasma blade can do? I have studied the specifications, instructor. Then you know that a plasma blade can reach temperatures of over 5,000 degrees. It can cut through starship armor like paper. It can melt steel in less than a second. He leaned down, his glowing eyes very close to her face. Steel cannot stop plasma, little human. Your ancestors' traditions will not save you here. Did not step back. She did not look away. She met his gaze with that same patient stillness. With respect, instructor, she said, I did not bring it to block. The laughter stopped. His mandibles clicked together in surprise. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the laughter returned, louder than before. But this time, not everyone was laughing. Some of the older cadets, the ones who had been at the academy for years, were watching the human with new interest. There was something in her voice, something in the way she stood. She was not afraid. Straightened up. We will see, he said. Return to your seat, and I suggest you find a real weapon before the combat trials begin. That piece of history will not help you. Bowed politely, a gesture that clearly confused, and walked back to her seat. The eyes followed her all the way. As she sat down, the furry creature on her left leaned toward her. You are either very brave or very stupid, it whispered. I think we are going to be roommates. I am, she replied. I know, everyone knows now. Ears twitched. You should have stayed quiet, will make your life difficult. Touched the handle of her sword and smiled. It was a small smile, just a slight curve of her lips, but there was something ancient in it. Something that had been passed down through countless generations of warriors on a small blue planet very far away. My grandfather used to say that the blade that hides in its sheath never learns to cut, she said. Let him make my life difficult. That is how swords are sharpened. Stared at her for a long moment. Then the creature made that huffing sound again, but this time it was not laughter. It was something closer to respect. The orientation continued but barely listened. She was thinking about home, about her father who had spent 20 years teaching her to fight, about her mother who had cried when she left but told her to make Earth proud, about her brother who had laughed and said she was crazy to go so far away, and about her grandfather who had placed this sword in her hands when she was just 7 years old and said words she would never forget. This blade has no magic. It will not make you strong. It will not make you fast. It will not protect you from anything. But if you learn to wield it properly, you will learn something that no weapon can teach. You will learn who you are. Closed her eyes and let her hand rest on the sword. She was very far from home. She was surrounded by creatures who thought she was weak. She carried a weapon they considered a joke. But she was not afraid. She was exactly where she was supposed to be. The first weeks at the academy were hard. Every morning began at what felt like midnight with loud alarms that shook the walls. The cadets had to dress, eat, and report to training within 30 minutes. Most species could do this easily. Had to run. Her room was small but clean. 2 beds, 2 desks, 2 storage units. Slept on the other side, wrapped in a thermal blanket that made soft humming sounds. The felon species needed warmth to sleep properly, and the station was kept cold for the comfort of the majority. learned quickly that comfort was not something the Academy cared about. The training schedule was brutal. Combat theory in the morning, weapons practice in the afternoon, physical conditioning in the evening. By the time returned to her room each night, her body ached in ways she had never experienced before. But she did not complain. She had been trained not to complain. The other cadets continued to mock her. In the weapons hall, she watched them practice with plasma rifles and particle disruptors and hard light blades. The weapons were beautiful and terrifying. They could destroy targets hundreds of meters away. They could cut through walls and armor and anything else. Practiced with her sword. She found an empty corner of the training bay and went through her forms. The movements were slow and flowing, like water running down a mountain. Her grandfather had taught her these forms when she was a child. Her father had refined them when she was a teenager. Now, alone in a station full of aliens, she practiced them again and again. The other cadets pointed and laughed. Some recorded her with their devices, probably to share with friends back home. Look at the strange human dancing with her metal stick. Instructor walked past one day and stopped to watch. His thermal eyes followed her movements for several minutes. Then he shook his head and walked away. He said nothing, but his mandibles were spread in that cold smile. Was different from the others. The felon was curious by nature and asked many questions. "Why do you move so slowly?" asked one night. "In a real fight, you would be dead before you finished one swing." Was sitting on her bed, cleaning her blade with a soft cloth. The ritual was important. Her grandfather had taught her that caring for the sword was as important as using it. "These are not fighting movements," she explained. "They are learning movements. My body must remember every position, every angle, every transition. When I fight for real, I will not think about any of this. My body will simply know." His ears twitched in confusion. "That makes no sense. Combat is about calculation. Speed, distance, angle of attack, probability of success. Every species knows this." "Humans know something different," said. She held up the blade and looked at her reflection in the steel. "We learned that thinking is too slow. By the time you calculate the perfect response, the fight is already over. So we trained our bodies to respond without thought. We call it instinct, or reflex, or in the old language, mushin, the mind of no mind." "That sounds like mystical nonsense," said. Smiled, perhaps, but my ancestors conquered their entire planet with swords like this. They fought for 10,000 years. They learned things that cannot be written in manuals or programmed into computers. Was quiet for a long moment. Then the felon curled up in the thermal blanket and closed those large dark eyes. "You are strange, human, but I think I like you." The preliminary trials came at the end of the first month. Every cadet was tested in 3 areas: marksmanship, tactical analysis, and physical endurance. Knew she would struggle with the first 2. The marksmanship test required shooting targets with a standard plasma pistol. She had practiced, but weapons that fired bolts of superheated matter were very different from weapons that required her to get close to her enemy. She ranked in the middle of her class. Not terrible, but not impressive. The tactical analysis test was a simulation. Cadets were placed in virtual combat situations and had to make decisions in real time. Did better here. Her father had taught her strategy along with sword forms. War was not just about individual combat. It was about reading the battlefield, understanding the enemy, and knowing when to fight and when to wait. She ranked slightly above average. But the endurance test was different. The test was simple. Cadets had to run on a machine that gradually increased in difficulty. Speed, incline, resistance. The machine pushed harder and harder until the cadet could not continue. The last one standing won. Species from heavy gravity worlds were expected to dominate. The like instructor and the arrogant cadet named came from a planet with twice Earth's gravity. They were naturally stronger and more resilient. The betting pools, which were technically forbidden but existed anyway, gave them the best odds. Nobody bet on the human. The test began. 50 cadets running on 50 machines, arranged in a circle so everyone could see everyone else. The first hour was easy. The second hour was harder. By the third hour, cadets began dropping out. Their legs gave way, their lungs burned, their hearts could not keep up. Ran. Her breathing was steady and controlled. Her stride was efficient, wasting no energy. Her face showed no pain, though pain was certainly there. She had learned long ago to separate her mind from her body's complaints. Pain was just information. It did not require a response. By the fourth hour, only 20 cadets remained. By the fifth hour, only 10. The cadets were still running, their 4 legs pounding the machines with mechanical precision, but some of them were slowing. Some of them were breathing hard. Kept the same pace, the same breathing, the same calm expression. By the sixth hour, only 5 cadets remained. 3, one creature with powerful legs, and the collapsed at the 7-hour mark. Its legs simply stopped working, folding beneath it like broken sticks. One of them fell at 7.5 hours, then another at 8 hours. Now it was just end. Was the top-ranked cadet in the academy. He was large even for with scales that were almost black and eyes that burned with constant anger. He had been cruel to since her first day, knocking her food tray from her hands, mocking her in front of others, calling her species pathetic and primitive. Now he was running beside her, and for the first time there was something other than contempt in his eyes. There was confusion. The machines pushed harder. Legs were screaming now, her lungs were burning, every muscle in her body begged her to stop. But she thought about her father, who had made her run up mountains when she was 12. She thought about her grandfather, who had stood in one position for 6 hours just to teach her patience. She thought about all the humans who had come before her, who had survived ice ages and wars and plagues, and everything else the universe had thrown at them. She did not stop. At 9 hours and 14 minutes, stumbled. His front legs buckled and he fell forward, sliding off the machine and crashing to the floor. He tried to get up, but his body refused. Ran for another 5 minutes just to make sure, then pressed the stop button and stepped off the machine. The room was silent. Instructor stood at the edge of the circle, his mandibles frozen in an expression that might have been shock. He had never seen a human before. He had certainly never seen one outrun. Walked past him, her legs shaking but her head held high. Luck muttered as she passed, nothing more. But his voice was uncertain, and his glowing eyes followed her all the way to the exit. That night brought extra food to their room and insisted eat all of it. "You are going to be famous," said, "or dead will not forget this." Chewed slowly and said nothing. She was already thinking about what came next. The combat trials were still 2 months away. She had time to prepare. But she knew was right, would not forget. And she was ready for him. The weeks after the endurance test were strange. Something had changed in the way other cadets looked at. Before, their eyes had held only mockery. Now there was something else mixed in. Curiosity, uncertainty, perhaps even a small amount of fear. But looked at her with pure hatred. He did not hide it. Every time entered a room, his burning orange eyes followed her. Every time she practiced with her sword, he stood nearby and made comments loud enough for everyone to hear. "The human got lucky," he said. "Her weak body will collapse in real combat. Endurance means nothing when plasma melts your flesh." His followers laughed at everything he said, had a group of cadets who treated him like a king. They were all large and strong and cruel. They pushed smaller species out of the way in the corridors. They took the best food at meals. They made the lives of anyone they considered inferior a constant misery. And now their attention was focused on. She ignored them. Her father had taught her that responding to insults was a waste of energy. Words could not hurt her, only actions mattered. but the actions came soon enough. It started small. Her training equipment went missing. Her food was contaminated with something that made her sick for 2 days. Her sword was moved from its place while she slept, and she found it hanging from a light fixture in the corridor, wrapped in a note that said "primitive trash." Was worried. "You should report this to the instructors," the felon said. "This is against academy rules." "Is careful," replied. "He never leaves proof that points to him, and the instructors do not like me anyway, would probably be glad to see me leave." "Then what will you do?" Retrieved her sword from the ceiling and inspected it carefully. The blade was not damaged. She cleaned it slowly and returned it to its place. "I will wait," she said. "Is not patient, he will make a mistake." She was right. The mistake came 6 weeks before the combat trials. Was practicing alone in Training Bay 7, going through her forms in the early morning when most cadets were still asleep. The bay was large and empty, with padded floors and walls that could be configured for different types of combat. She was in the middle of a flowing sequence when the doors opened. Walked in, followed by his group of followers. There were 5 of them in total, all large, all looking at her with hungry eyes. Stopped 10 meters away and crossed 2 of his arms while the other 2 hung at his sides. "I am tired of waiting," he said. "I am tired of sharing this academy with vermin. Every day I see your face, I feel sick. Every day I remember that you beat me in that test, I cannot sleep." Lowered her sword and faced him. Her heart was beating faster, but her face showed nothing. "The test was fair," she said. "You simply stopped before I did." Hissed. His scales rippled with color changes that had learned to recognize as anger. "Fair? There is nothing fair about you being here. Your species should be cleaning floors, not training beside true warriors. You are an insect, a mistake, and I am going to correct that mistake right now. If you attack me outside the rules, you will be expelled," said. "I am not going to attack you," stepped forward and raised his voice so it echoed through the training bay. "I challenge you to a formal duel, under Academy law, witnessed by any who wish to watch. Plasma blade against your pathetic steel." Formal duels were part of the Academy's oldest traditions. Any cadet could challenge any other cadet. The fights continued until one fighter could not continue or surrendered. Serious injuries were common. Deaths were rare but not unheard of. And no one could refuse a formal challenge without losing all standing in the Academy. Knew this, his mandibles spread in that terrible smile. "Unless you are too afraid, little human. Unless you want to run back to your planet and admit that your species is worthless." Felt her grip tighten on her sword. She thought about her family back on Earth. Her father, who had spent 20 years preparing her for moments exactly like this. Her mother, who had told her to make Earth proud. Her brother, who had always believed she was stronger than she knew. And her grandfather, who had given her this sword with words she would never forget. The blade does not choose its battles, but once drawn it must cut. She took a slow breath and let it out. Her heart calmed. Her mind cleared. The fear that had flickered in her chest faded away, replaced by something older and colder. "I accept," she said. Blinked. He had expected her to hesitate, to argue, to try to find a way out. Her immediate acceptance surprised him. "Good," he said after a moment. "The duel will be held in Main Arena tomorrow at midday. All are welcome to watch." He leaned forward, his burning eyes boring into hers. "When I am done, there will not be enough of you left to send home." He turned and walked away. His followers went with him, casting ugly looks back at as they left. The doors closed, was alone again. She stood very still for a long moment. Then she raised her sword and returned to her forms, moving through the sequences as if nothing had happened. By the time she finished, the news had already spread across the entire station. That evening's room was crowded, paced back and forth, ears twitching in distress. 3 other cadets had come to see her, species who had been friendly since the endurance test. A tall, thin being named who had compound eyes and moved with quick, nervous energy. A heavy creature named who looked like a walking boulder but spoke in a surprisingly gentle voice. And a small floating entity named who communicated through color patterns on its surface. "You cannot win," said. "Has fought 12 duels. He has won all of them. 3 of his opponents are still in medical recovery. His plasma blade is military grade," added. "It can reach temperatures that would melt your sword in less than a second of contact." Flashed concerned colors that's translator interpreted as, "This seems unwise." Stopped packing and looked at with wide, worried eyes. "Why did you accept? You could have found another way." Was sitting on her bed, her sword across her lap. She was running the cleaning cloth over the blade with slow, deliberate motions. "There was no other way," she said. "If I refused, I would be finished at this academy. Everyone would know I was afraid, would never stop hunting me. This ends tomorrow, one way or another." "It will end with you in pieces," said. Perhaps, held up the blade and looked at her reflection in the steel, but perhaps not. She set the sword aside and stood. From her storage unit she took out a bundle of folded cloth. She unwrapped it carefully, revealing a set of clothes she had not worn since leaving Earth. Traditional training clothes, white and blue, simple and plain. Her mother had given them to her the night before she left. "My grandmother wore these when she trained," said, touching the fabric. "And her mother before her, and her mother before that. 5 generations of women in my family have worn these clothes into battle." She looked at her friends, these strange beings from distant worlds who had come to worry about her. "Tomorrow I will wear them again, and we will see if steel is truly useless against plasma." No one knew what to say. Smiled. It was a small smile, but there was no fear in it. "Go and sleep. Tomorrow will be interesting." One by one they left. Only remained, curling up in the thermal blanket and watching with those large, dark eyes. "I hope you know what you are doing," said. Lay down on her bed and stared at the ceiling. "So do I," she said. But her voice was calm, and when she closed her eyes, she fell asleep almost immediately. She dreamed of mountains and rivers and a small house where an old man sat polishing a sword and smiling at her with pride. The main arena was full. Had never seen so many beings in one place. The seats rose up in great circles around the fighting floor, and every single seat was taken. Species of all shapes and sizes had come to watch. Word had spread beyond the academy to the civilian sections of Station 7. Merchants, travelers, and workers had all come to see something that had never happened before. A human fighting with a sword against with a plasma blade. Most of them had come to see her die. Walked through the entrance tunnel alone. The white and blue training clothes fit her perfectly, comfortable and light. Her sword was at her side, the familiar weight of it calming her nerves. Her dark hair was tied back tight, and her feet were bare on the cool metal floor. The crowd made sounds when they saw her. Clicking, buzzing, murmuring in dozens of languages. Her translator picked up some of it. "So small. What is she thinking? This will be over quickly. I bet 10 credits she lasts less than 1 minute." Ignored them all. She walked to the center of the arena and stopped. The floor here was made of a special material that could absorb plasma burns. It was scorched and marked from countless previous duels. Some of those marks looked like body shapes. A platform floated down from above, carrying the officiator. It was a machine, not a living being. Duels required neutral judgment, and machines did not take sides. "This is a formal duel under Academy law," the machine announced. Its voice echoed through the arena. "Cadet of Prime has challenged Cadet of Earth. The duel will continue until one fighter surrenders, cannot continue, or dies. There are no other rules. Do both fighters understand?" "I understand," said. He was already in the arena, standing across from. His scales were darker than usual, almost black, and his 4 arms were spread wide. In his two upper hands he held his plasma blade. It was not activated yet, but even dormant, the weapon looked deadly. The handle was long enough for his massive grip, and the blade emitter hummed with contained energy. "I understand," said. Her voice was quiet, but somehow it carried through the arena. The crowd fell silent. The officiator floated higher, then let the duel begin. Activated his plasma blade. The weapon came alive with a sound like tearing air. A bar of pure light extended from the handle, glowing so bright that had to narrow her eyes. The heat hit her from 10 meters away. It was like standing near an open furnace. The air around the blade shimmered and warped. "Last chance to surrender," said. His voice was filled with pleasure. "I will make it quick if you kneel and admit that humans are inferior." Drew her sword. The steel sang as it left the sheath. It was not glowing. It did not hum with energy. It was just metal, folded and shaped by her grandfather's hands over 3 months of patient work. In the light of the plasma blade, it looked like a toy. She settled into a low stance. Her weight shifted to her back foot. Her blade extended forward, angled slightly down, the posture of flowing water, the first form her grandmother had taught her. "Come," she said, "and learn why Earth's warriors were never conquered." Roared and charged. He was fast, much faster than his size suggested. His 4 legs pushed him across the arena floor like a missile, and his plasma blade swept toward in a burning arc that could cut through starship armor. But was not there. She moved the instant he committed to his attack, not backward, which was what he expected. She moved sideways and forward, slipping past the edge of his swing like smoke passing through a closing door. The heat of the plasma blade washed over her, singing the edge of her sleeve, but the blade itself touched nothing but air. Spun, surprised. She had been right in front of him. Now she was beside him, her sword still raised, her eyes still calm. He attacked again. 2 of his arms swung the plasma blade in a horizontal slash while the other 2 reached for her, trying to grab her and hold her still. Again she was not there. This time she ducked low, so low that her back was almost parallel to the ground, and the plasma blade passed over her head close enough to burn the top of her hair. She rolled beneath his grasping arms and came up behind him, her blade whipping toward his back. He spun and blocked with his lower arms, taking a shallow cut on his scales. First blood. The crowd gasped. "Lucky," snarled. "You are just lucky." He attacked with everything he had. The plasma blade became a storm of light, cutting and slashing and burning from every angle. His 4 arms gave him reach and versatility that no human fighter could match. His training was decades of combat experience. His weapon could destroy anything it touched. But he could not touch her. Moved like she was made of water, like she was a memory of movement rather than movement itself. Every attack passed through spaces where she had been a heartbeat before. She did not block, she did not parry, she did not meet force with force. She simply flowed around everything he threw at her. The crowd had gone completely silent. They had come to see a quick execution. Instead, they were seeing something they could not understand. Was slowing down. His attacks were becoming wild, desperate. Could see the pattern of his breathing, the tension in his muscles, the tiny movements that told her where he would strike before he struck. Her father had taught her to read bodies like books. Combat was a conversation, and the one who listened won. She was listening now and was screaming. He made a massive overhead swing, putting all his strength into it. The plasma blade came down like a falling sun, aimed at splitting her in half. Stepped into the attack. It was the most dangerous thing she could do. Everyone watching thought she had finally made a mistake, but she had been waiting for this moment. His arms were extended. His weapon was committed. For one small instant, he was completely open. She slipped inside his guard, her body passing so close to the plasma blade that her skin reddened from the heat. Her sword flashed up, steel catching the light. She cut across his weapon arm, Not deep, not crippling, just enough. The plasma blade fell from his grip and deactivated before it hit the ground. Staggered backward, staring at the blood running down his scales. His mandibles clicked together in shock. He could not understand what had happened. His mind was still trying to calculate how she had moved, where she had gone, how she had gotten so close. Stood before him, her sword still raised. There was blood on the steel now, glowing faintly in the arena lights. Her breathing was controlled. Her stance was ready. "Steel does not need to stop plasma," she said. Her voice was clear enough for the entire arena to hear. "It only needs to reach you first." Looked at his fallen blade. He looked at the blood on his arm. He looked at the small human who had done what no one thought possible. Then he did something no one expected. He sank to his knees. "I yield," he said. The words came out like he was choking on them. "The duel is over. I yield." The officiator floated down. "The duel is concluded. The winner is Cadet of Earth." For a long moment there was silence. Then the arena exploded with sound. Not all of it was cheering. Some of it was confusion, disbelief, anger. But underneath it all was something else. Something that had not been there before. Respect. Sheathed her sword with a soft click. She bowed then to the crowd, then walked toward the exit tunnel. Her hands were shaking now that the fight was over. Her legs felt weak. The burns on her skin were starting to hurt, but she did not let any of it show. She walked like a warrior, like all the warriors who had come before her. And somewhere, very far away, she knew her grandfather was smiling. The medical bay was quiet. Sat on a treatment table while a mechanical arm applied healing gel to the burns on her arms and face. The gel was cool and smelled faintly of something chemical. She had been told the burns would be completely healed within 2 days. Technology was impressive when it came to fixing bodies. Breaking them was even more impressive, of course, but tried not to think about that. The door opened and instructor walked in. His 4 arms were clasped behind his back, and his thermal sensing eyes glowed in the dim light of the medical bay. He stood near the entrance for a long moment, just watching her. "The whole station is talking about you," he finally said. "The human who beat her with a piece of metal." Did not respond. She let the medical arm finish its work and then sat up straight on the table. Moved closer. He was so tall that he had to duck slightly to avoid the lights hanging from the ceiling. Up close, could see the age in his scales. They were duller than a younger's, and there were small scars here and there. This was a being who had seen many battles. "How?" he asked. "Our sensors tracked the entire fight. Every movement, every temperature change, every muscle twitch. We analyzed it afterward with our best combat programs, and none of them could predict your movements. None of them could explain how you avoided attacks that should have been impossible to avoid." Looked at her sword, which lay beside her on the table. The blood had been cleaned from the blade, and the steel gleamed under the medical lights. "Your technology predicts based on logic," she said. "It calculates probability. It measures distance and speed and angle. It assumes that fighters will move in ways that make sense." "Yes, that is how combat works." "Not for humans." Picked up the sword and held it in her lap. "My grandmother called it Mushin, the mind of no mind. When I fight, I do not calculate. I do not think about where to move or how to attack. I simply become empty, and my body does what 10,000 years of training have taught it to do." His mandibles clicked together slowly. "You are saying that you move without thinking." "I am saying that thinking is too slow. Your computers are fast, but they are still thinking. They are still predicting, and prediction requires patterns. But when my mind is empty, there is no pattern. I am just water. I go where the space opens. I move where the danger is not." The instructor was quiet for a long time. Could see something changing in his eyes. The contempt that had been there since her first day was fading. Something else was taking its place. "I have trained warriors for 47 years, he said. I have seen species from 200 worlds. I thought I understood combat. I thought I knew what made a fighter dangerous." He looked at the sword in her hands. "I was wrong." Bowed her head slightly. It was a gesture of respect, one that seemed to understand despite their different cultures. "My grandfather used to say that the greatest weapon is not the sword," she said. "It is the hand that holds it. Steel can be broken. Plasma can be dodged. But the will of a warrior, the spirit that refuses to fall, that is something no technology can overcome." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Your grandfather sounds like an interesting being." "He was the best man I ever knew. He died 3 years ago. This sword is all I have left of him." "Then he would be proud of you today." Felt something warm in her chest. It was the first kind thing had ever said to her. The instructor straightened up and moved toward the door. Before he left, he turned back. "Perhaps," he said, "the Academy has something to learn from Earth after all. I will speak with the Council. We may need to change some of our training methods." Then he was gone. Sat alone in the medical bay, holding her grandfather's sword. For the first time since leaving home, she allowed herself to cry. The year that followed was unlike anything could have imagined. Word of the duel spread quickly, not just across Station 7, but across the sector, and then beyond. News services carried the story. Combat academies requested copies of the fight recording. Military analysts wrote papers trying to explain what they had witnessed. The human with the sword, the warrior who moved like water, the small being from a small planet who had humiliated one of the galaxy's most feared species. Requests began arriving at the Academy. Other institutions wanted human instructors. They wanted to learn the ancient arts that had demonstrated. They wanted to understand the mind of no mind. Finished her training at the Academy and graduated with honors. Instructor himself presented her certification, and there was genuine respect in his voice when he spoke her name. Was there too. He had changed after the duel. The arrogance was gone from his eyes, replaced by something quieter. He did not apologize for how he had treated her. Culture did not work that way, but he bowed to her when she passed, and that was enough. Was offered positions at 3 different military academies. She turned them all down. Instead, she requested assignment to a small training post on the edge of known space, where new cadets from dozens of species came to learn the basics of combat. She became an instructor there. Every morning, she woke early and practiced her forms, just as she had done since childhood. Every afternoon, she taught classes of young beings who looked at her with confusion when she told them to stop thinking and start feeling. "But instructor," they would say, "that makes no sense. Combat is about calculation." And would smile and remember saying the same thing to her father, long ago, before she understood. "Empty your minds," she would tell them. "Become like water, and one day you will move without moving. You will fight without fighting. You will understand." Most of them did not understand. Not at first, but some of them did. And those few became warriors like no one had ever seen. 3 years after her graduation, received a message from Earth. Her mother had fallen ill, took emergency leave and made the long journey home. Earth was exactly as she remembered. Blue and green and brown, a small world spinning quietly in the darkness. The transport landed near her family home, a traditional house in the mountains where her grandfather had lived and died. Her mother recovered. Her father was older now, his hair gray, but he still moved with the grace of a lifelong martial artist. Her brother had married and had 2 children who called the Space Ant and demanded stories about aliens. On her last night home, walked alone to her grandfather's memorial. It was a small stone in a quiet garden, surrounded by flowers that bloomed even in winter. She knelt before it and placed the sword on the ground. "I did it, grandfather," she said. "I made them see. I made them understand what you taught me." The wind blew through the garden, rustling the flowers. It sounded almost like a voice. stayed there until the sun rose. Then she picked up the sword, bowed to the memorial, and walked back to the house. She had received a new assignment. A prestigious combat academy in the core systems had requested her specifically. They wanted to establish the first official school of human martial arts in galactic history. She had accepted. Before she left Earth again, she stopped at her grandfather's old workshop. Most of his tools were still there, carefully preserved. And there, hanging on the wall, was a second sword, simpler than the one she carried, but just as beautiful. Her grandfather had made it for himself decades ago. Took it down and held it carefully. Her grandfather's sword would stay on Earth, in a place of honor in the family home. It had done its work. It had carried her across the stars and back. But she would not go unarmed into her new life. She wrapped the new blade carefully and packed it with her things. A new sword for a new beginning, but the lessons were the same. Steel does not need to stop plasma. It only needs a human to wield it. And as long as there were humans in the galaxy, steel would never be obsolete. Boarded her ship and looked back at Earth one last time. Then she turned toward the stars. There was so much work to do.